Hello. Welcome. For those of you who are watching me for the very first time, my name is James Ambroise, and on this channel, we cover how to pay off debt faster than any other debt repayment method out there. We cover basic bookkeeping and accounting for someone who just started out a small business. We cover basic personal income tax to include a Schedule C, Schedule E, depreciation. I am also the author, creator of Ambroise Method 1.0. Ambroise Method 1.0 is a revolutionary debt repayment method that offers greater results in terms of reducing interest cost compared to Debt Snowball, Debt Avalanche, Velocity Banking. Real quick about my credentials. I have been or am a bookkeeper and accountant, QuickBooks Pro advisor, senior tax advisor, residential real estate investor, residential property manager, financial coach. And as always, before we get started with what's on the board, please allow me to shout out the name Jesus, my Lord, my God, my Creator. Thank you. All right, America, on the board we have this hypothetical scenario of somebody who filled out one of my Microsoft Excel worksheets. And the person provided me with these figures. For that, this person has a Capital One credit card, USA credit card, Navy Federal credit card, PenFed HELOC, and Regions HELOC. Okay, credit limit $8,000, APR $26.99, balance owed $72.74, monthly payments charged $257. That's how much this person is being charged currently on that account, $257. Availability, America, we've learned on lesson 1 that the availability is the relationship between the credit limit and the balance owed. And that relationship calls for a subtraction operation. So 8,000 minus 72.74, that's how we arrive at 726. Okay? Credit utilization is the relationship between the balance owed and the credit limit. And that relationship calls for a division operation. So 72.74 divided by 8,000, that's how we arrive at 93%. Payment rate charge is the relationship between the monthly payments charged and the balance owed. And that relationship calls for a division operation. So 257 divided by 72.74, that's how we arrive at 3.53%. Okay? On the PenFed HELOC, it is a 10/20 HELOC, which means the first number is the draw period, the other number is the repayment period. So 10-year draw, 20-year repayment, and right here we're on year 1 of 10. Okay? On the Region HELOC, same thing. It's a 10/20 HELOC, so 10-year draw, 20-year repayment, and right now we're on year 1 of 10. Okay? Now, on the board we have credit cards in HELOC. All the credit card offers balance transfers, but the balance transfer is capped at 75% of the credit limit. That's the max you could go on the credit limit. Okay? Now, the APR, normally, for balance transfers, sometimes you get a better offer, like a 0% intro or 1.99% intro on the APR. But this one, the APR is the same as the purchase, which means if you use any of the accounts, the APR gonna stay the same. The APR doesn't change. It's not a 0% intro. It's not a 1.99 intro. The APR is the same, okay, as purchase. Okay. Now on the bills, the expenses $46.80. Out of these expenses, $14.67 could go on a credit card. So out of the $46.80 of expenses, only $1,467 could go on a credit card. Now, on the balance transfer earlier, at least the balance transfer is at 0%. So they don't charge you any balance transfer fees, okay? All right, coming down to some more items. We got income, $48.80. We got expenses, $46.80. The debt, that's when you add all these balances, 72.74, 80.10, 5,000, 70, 93. we arrive at 183,284. Okay, and cash flow, you know, to get to cash flow is the relationship between the income and the expense, and that relationship calls for a subtraction operation. So 4880 minus the 4680, that's how we arrive at the $200 cash flow. Okay, now question posed to me was, James, is there a way that you could run your method against the other method for 1 month? So can we do your method against them, against Debt Snowball, against Debt Avalanche, against Velocity Banking? Just a quick way to show you my method for 1 month only. Okay. All right, America, I'll give you an opportunity to take a look at what's on the board, and in about 5-10 seconds, then we're gonna start with the exercise. All right, America. Now, my method has, if you guys been watching my previous lessons, my method has 2 different type of users. We have what we call a normal user, and we have what we call an advanced user. Okay, today we're gonna concentrate more so on an advanced user, not a normal user. But real quick though, a normal user, that's a user that use everything. Remember, our method has the T for transfer, our method has the A for alternative account, and our method has the C for cash flow. The regular user uses transfer, which is the T, uses the cash flow, which is the C, but the regular normal user do not use an alternative account. Okay, so we use transfer, we use cash flow, we do not use alternative account. The reason why they don't use alternative account is because they do not understand the alternative account yet. Because remember, the alternative account is a very dangerous account if you don't know what you're doing. It's a very dangerous account. Okay? Now, obviously, an advanced user, that is one who takes full advantage of everything. So we do the T, we do the transfer. An advanced user do the A, that's the alternative account. An advanced user also uses cash flow. Okay? So one only use everything except for the alternative account, and the other uses everything. Okay? All right. Now, again, on the board, I put down that an alternative account is very dangerous. So if you do not know what you're doing, so do not touch it, do not taste it, do not handle it, okay? Unless you know what you're doing, okay? Do not do anything with an alternative account. Be a regular user, a normal user that uses the regular checking account to pay off debt. Don't be trying to do an alternative account, because you might end up screwing yourself in the process. So, you know, if you have to take your time and watch more of my videos, okay, do a few consultations. Well, right now I'm not taking any clients, but, you know, pretty soon I will. So things like that, that way you have more knowledge. Then at that time, you could start utilizing an alternative account, okay? And again, America, an alternative account is a very dangerous account if you don't know what you're doing, okay? So now, if you decide to use an alternative account, there are some prep work that needs to be done first, okay? One of them is the due date, okay? So, you know, some of your bills, sometimes they are due on the 1st, on the 10th, on the 12th, whatever the due date is. If you decide to do an alternative, to use an alternative account, 99% of the time, you have to change the due date, okay? And the way we prefer it, especially for the folks who are using automatic payment, we want you to move everything towards the end of the month, 99% of the time. So if a bill is due on the 1st, you know, some bills, you call your bank, your creditors, and try to make it due on the 28th instead, okay? If you got something that's due on the 17th, you try to make it due on the 28th instead, Okay, so change the due date to the 28th if it's gonna be auto payment. Okay, why the 28th, James? Well, the 28th of the month, we know every month at least have 28 days in it. Okay, because February, on the coming year, February has 28 days, and on a leap year, February has 29 days. So at least every single month has 28 days, okay? We don't want to change it to anything. Well, a lot of times it'll be difficult to change it to something greater than 28 anyways. But when you can, we don't want to change it to, say, the 29th, say the 30th, say the 31st, okay? Because for one, not every month has 30 days, 31 days, or 29 days. And another thing, we do not want the bank, we do not want their computer to have to adjust for the date, okay? So for that reason, we prefer to have 28 because every month has 28 days. Because if the bank's gonna adjust something, there might be an opportunity for error. So for that reason, we prefer them to be under 28. And again, it's 99% of the time. There is one exception, and I covered that exception on our advanced version, Ambroise Method 2.0. Okay? Now, that was for the due date. Trying to have everything towards the end of the month, preferably on the 20th, especially if you're going to have auto pay, automatic payment. Now, the automatic payment. For the automatic payment, America, we want everything to be on the account with the highest APR, okay? So there could only be two accounts that we have auto payment on. The one with the highest APR, okay? Especially in the case of credit cards, so it's gonna be the highest APR. So on the board we have 26, 22, 15, 8, 10. So for this example, our auto payment will go on the Capital One because the Capital One has the highest APR. So our auto payment, if you're gonna use an alternative account, our auto payment gonna be on the highest APR. Now, remember now, Capital One is a credit card. So we know, especially in the example that was given, that only 1,467 could go on a credit card, okay? But we have 4,680 total, okay? So more than likely, you're gonna need another account. So if you're gonna use auto payment, so now you're gonna have two separate auto payment. For the bills that could go on the credit card, you're gonna have an auto payment for those, and it's gonna be the highest APR credit card. The highest, the absolute highest on the board, okay? And for other bills that cannot go on a credit card, these bills gonna be, the auto payment gonna be on your checking account, okay? On your checking account. Okay? Because remember, the type of HELOC we have are not the type of HELOCs where you could do, these are traditional HELOCs, okay? Because you know, we have first in HELOC with a sweep checking account feature. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about traditional regular HELOC. That's what we have on the board. So because these are traditional regular HELOC, so again, we're gonna have two separate auto pay. One to the credit card with the highest APR, another auto pay to the checking account, regular checking account, okay? And you may have to do this 99% of the time. And again, there's only one exception, and I covered that exception, well, maybe a few exceptions, but I covered these exceptions on our advanced version, Ambroise Method 2.0, okay? So far, you have to change the due date. You might have to change the due date. So far, if you decide to do auto payment, it has to be in two separate accounts, okay? For bills that could go on a credit card with the highest APR. For bills that cannot go on a credit card, it's gonna be the regular checking account. The third and final rules, okay? These are preliminary rules, is that when using an alternative account, America, income has to come in first. Income has to always come in first. Well, 99% of the time, income has to come in first. And income has to be greater than or equal to expenses, okay? So, greater than or equal to expenses. So if you're getting paid and your paycheck, say your paycheck is only $2,000, Well, your expenses 99% of the time cannot be greater than $2,000. So your expenses cannot be 201 because you're only receiving $2,000. Okay? So if you're paying off bills, make sure that your expenses don't go above your income 99% of the time. Okay? Because otherwise you're not going to get best performance in that account. If you want best performance, income has to always be greater than expenses or equal to expenses. Okay, they could be the same. So in the example that I've mentioned, $2,000, expense could be $2,000, but expense cannot be 201, 202, 203, cannot be greater than the income that's coming in for that particular period. Okay, because otherwise you're kind of going backwards, or at least you're not going to get best performance in that account. Okay, so real quick, changing the due date, 99% of the time you have to change the due date, the auto pay. Okay, 99% of the time you have to change the auto pay. And the rules, income, 99% of the time you have to change. Make sure that the income is greater than the expense or equal to the expense. Again, all these exceptions, I covered the exceptions on our advanced version, Ambroise Method 2.0. As you could see, America, this account, this alternative account is a very dangerous account. Okay? All right. Now, let's move down to the steps when using Ambroise Method 1.0. Okay? Ambroise Method 1.0 calls for a series of steps that need to be taken at least once a month. Okay? What are the steps, James? Well, by the way, there might be an impact to credit score when you're using my method. There might be. There may not be, but there might be. Okay? The first step is to segregate. The next step is to compare. The next step is to transfer. Let's just go over the list. The next step is to repeat. So segregate, compare, transfer, repeat. And then there might be some conditions, some exceptions, some restrictions. Okay, I'm going to cover that maybe on another lesson. Okay, so segregate, compare, transfer, repeat. Okay, and these 4 items are above the line. You see, there's a line. Okay, these are above the line. There goes the line. They are above the line. Okay, then below the line we have some questions. Can we only use cash flow, or can we send in a large payment? Okay? If it's yes for cash flow, then we are here. If it's yes for large payment, then we are here. Okay? And the questions are the same. Which account to use? Which account to use? These are all questions that you need to answer. Which ADAWA account to use? Which ADAWA account to use? How much of a payment to send? How much of a payment to send? To pay down of which debt? To pay down of which debt? Same questions, okay? I just want you to make the distinction that when you are here, because you're dealing with cash flow, and when you are here, you're dealing with large payment, okay? Fairly simple. It's easy to remember. Segregate, compare, transfer, repeat. Then you're going to ask the what. The W, which account? The H, how much? And the T. WHT, the what? Which account? How much? To pay down which debt? Easy, guys. Easy to remember. Again, segregate, compare, transfer, repeat, and then the what? Which account? How much of a payment? To pay down which debt? Okay? Making it extremely simple for you guys to remember. Okay? Extremely simple to do. Now, James, what do you mean by segregate? Okay? When we segregate by same account type. That's looking at the list of debt. Basically, we're trying to put some order, okay? You look at the list of debt and you segregate them by same account type, which means all the revolving gonna be with all the revolving, and all the installments gonna be with other installments, okay? So you group the revolving together and you group the installments together. So if we have, in this list, we so happen to have all revolving because the HELOC has a draw period. So all of them you group them together. And then if you had installment loans like personal loan, mortgage, they'll be at the bottom and you group them together. So all revolving, you group them together. All installment, you group them together. That way you don't make any mistake. You know when you're dealing with revolving account, then you know when you're dealing with installment account. Okay? Like credit card, mortgages, personal loan, student loan, things like that. Okay? So we segregate them by account type. Revolving together, installment together. And I prefer the revolving above, and I prefer the installment down below, but it doesn't really matter. Okay? Then we compare. How do we compare? We compare by APR. So we compare them against each other by APR. So on the list, America, we have 26.99, 22, 15, 8, and 8. So we could tell that the 26 is the highest one. And the lowest one is the 8. So the absolute highest one is 26.99. And by APR we compare. The absolute lowest is 8.13. You see that? So that's how we compare them. So if your list is in no kind of order, then you have to change the order to where the highest one, I prefer the highest one on top and the lowest one in the bottom by account type. Then you do the same for the installment. By account type, the highest one on top, the lowest one in the bottom by account type. Okay? All right, so that was the compare. You compare them by APR and then you list them highest to lowest. Okay? Then we transfer. The next step, we transfer. How do we transfer? Well, we only execute a transfer when the number and math makes sense, because sometimes you could do a transfer where it doesn't make sense. When the number or math makes sense, then we'll do a transfer, and we do the transfer. In the case of credit card now, from the highest APR card into the lowest APR card, okay? So in this case, we would transfer from 26.99. We'll relocate balances from the 26.99, which is the capital one, that's the highest APR. We're trying to move these balances into the lowest APR. So from absolute highest into the absolute lowest, okay? From maximum interest savings. Remember, our method is all about saving on interest costs, saving on interest costs, saving on interest costs. For that reason, absolute highest to the absolute lowest. Not absolute highest to the next lowest. No, absolute highest to the absolute lowest. That's how we do our transfers. And again, to the extent that we can, okay? Then finally, we repeat the process. So we repeat the process of comparing and transferring again, okay? If there's more opportunity to do balance transfers, we'll do balance transfers. And remember, I have all different kinds, all different types of balance transfers in my method. Remember, from previous lessons, we covered the normal balance transfers. From previous lesson, artificial balance transfer, mix and match balance transfer, and repeat. That's the repeat, okay? So we have different type of balance transfer that we do, okay? So reason why you're trying to do all these transfers, America, you try to reduce your overall APR average, okay? Look at what we have on the board. All kind of APR, they are all over the place. 26, 22, 15, 8, 8. So they're all over the place. Your goal is to try to put some kind of order in these APR in order to save to have the greater results in terms of reducing interest costs. So by doing all these transfers, you're gonna reduce your average, your simple average APR, okay? Now, all these items here are, again, above the line. And we know that above the line, you're trying to stay above the line for as long as you could, okay? You do not go below the line until you're completely done with the item above the line. And the only item above the line really is just transfer, okay? Just transfer, okay? Out of the tag from previous lessons, so we have the T, we have the A, we have the C. The T is above the line. That's just the transfer. Okay? That's just the transfer. So you're trying to transfer. If you have an opportunity to transfer, keep transferring to the extent that you can. Because remember, we have different kinds of transfers for our method. Okay? All right. And the transfer is above the line. And again, you do not go below the line unless you're completely done with the item above the line. So all of these has to be completely exhausted before you could come downstairs, okay, below the line. Now below the line, after the four above has been exhausted, so the segregate, the compare, the transfer, the repeat, then the next step is to ask the question, can we only use cash flow or can we send in a large payment? Because you know sometimes while you're doing that, you might have a bonus checks that comes in. Well, that's the large payment. You might have a income tax refund that comes in, okay? That's a large payment, okay? You know, kind of like some unusual stuff that happens while you know, paying off debt, okay? So you have to ask those questions, right? And then if it's a yes for cash flow, if you're going to use cash flow only, then you are here. But if you're dealing with a large payment, then you are here during the time when you're dealing with a large payment. And again, segregate America, compare, transfer, repeat, and you're always trying to stay above the line before you go below the line, okay? So you stay above the line. There's more opportunity to repeat, you keep repeating, you keep repeating, you keep repeating transfer, you keep repeating the transfer, okay? Then when you come down, it's the what, which account to use, or which account to use, which account to use. This is for someone who's using just a checking account. This is our normal user, okay? This is our normal user, and which a account to use, that is for advanced user, okay? So remember, our method, we have two different types of users, a normal user and an advanced user. Which account to use, for the normal user is going to be either the checking account or savings account, but preferably the checking account. Which account to use, now we're talking about the dangerous account, which is the alternative account, okay? And then that's the W, okay? How much, that's the H, and to pay down which debt, that's the T. What, WHT, okay? And on top was the transfer for the tag. Down below, we have which a account, that's the A. And to pay down which debt, so which account gets to keep the cash flow, that's the C, okay? All right, America. I'll give you about 5-10 seconds to take a look at what's on the board. And then I'm going to start erasing stuff from the board in about 5-10 seconds. All right, America. Now, that were the steps. And we do the steps again at least once a month. And the following month, we repeat the steps again. Segregate, compare, transfer, repeat. And then which account, and then the what, okay? Once a month. Very easy to remember. Okay. Next item we're going to talk about is what we normally use on our observation session for comparison purpose. Okay? These right here are not the steps. On every video, at the end of the video, I have our observation session. Okay? And you know we always compare our method with Debt Snowball at the end of every video. we always compare our method with that Avalanche, Velocity Banking, and this will be, since we're doing Ambroise Method 1.0, today we're going to add Ambroise Method 1.0. Okay? This is only for comparison purpose only, when we're trying to compare with the other debt repayment methods. Okay? Now, on the board, I put down some possible errors on the HELOC. Okay? So when the client fill out the form, I'm talking directly now to the financial coach. Okay? Obviously, we have to double check the numbers. Okay? To make sure that the client did not make a mistake. And on the HELOC, we know that some HELOCs, well, most HELOCs are most HELOCs are interest only. Most of them, not all. And some HELOCs has, believe it or not, has principal and interest only, even during the draw period. Okay? So not all HELOCs are interest only, guys. Some lenders, they still want you to pay interest, principal and interest, even with a home equity line of credit. Okay? So if this HELOC was interest only, if we do, then the computation would be 70,000, especially in the case, we're talking about in the case of PenFed now. 70,000 times 8.25% divided by 12, we would arrive at, okay, let's see, 70,000 times 8.25% divided by 12, we arrive at 481, okay, for monthly payment. But on the board, we have 497. So that's a possible error, okay? Could be an error, may not be an error, okay? And when we go down to the regions, this one was the PenFed one, okay? When we go down to the regions one, and again, we're assuming it's interest only, okay? The balance is 93,000, so to figure out how much the monthly payment should be, it would be 93,000 if it was interest only, times 8.13% divided by 12. We are at $630. But on the board, we have 837. So on the board here, we have 497 for the PenFed, and for the regions, we have 837. So the numbers don't match, okay? So in a situation like that, of course, talking to my financial coach, you would obviously double check, place a phone call to the client and find out exactly what's going on, okay? And again, don't assume that it's all interest only, because we know that some HELOCs are not just interest only. They are in principal and interest, okay? So we will place a phone call to the client, to make sure that these numbers are correct, okay? But in this particular scenario, we're trying to get a hold of the client. Well, we know that the client is on vacation, okay? So there's nothing we can do about it. We have to wait until the client gets back, okay? But at least though, let's try to figure out what's going on with this 70. So let's assume that, and again, the formula was balance, right, times interest rate divided by 12. Okay, that's how we arrive at the monthly payment. In this case, okay, if it was interest only, okay. So if we're trying to figure this thing out ourselves, we could kind of work backwards into the equation to figure out what the interest rate should have been, because maybe the client made a mistake, maybe not. Okay, so the balance is 70. In the case of PenFed now. The balance is 70 times the interest rate. Well, we already know that interest rate is wrong, okay? So we don't know what the interest rate is. Divided by 12 equals the monthly payment. In the case of PenFed, that's $497. So for something like that, we could kind of work backwards into the equation, right? So it would be the $497 times the 100 times the 12, at least that's how I do it, divided by the 70 to arrive at the x, okay? All right, so in a case like this, trying to figure out what the interest rate should have been, 497 times 100 times 12 divided by 70,000. So now we're at X now would have been 852%. Okay? So and now just to prove that it is 852, it would have been the 70 times 852% divided by 12. Now we should arrive at the 497. Okay, again, let's double check our numbers. 70,000 times 8.52% divided by 12, 497. Okay, so now it should have been 857. Maybe it should have been 857, and maybe the client transposed some number. I'm sorry, 852. Maybe they transposed some numbers. Instead of typing 852, they typed in 825. Okay, that is one way you're trying to verify and come up with the right interest rate. Okay, it should have been 852. Looks like it should have been 852, but the client again transposed some numbers and put down 825. Okay, that was the PenFed. Now, on the regions, well, let me give you guys like 2-3 seconds to take a look at this real quick, and then we're gonna do the regions because I'm gonna start erasing that from the board. Okay. All right, on the regions now, so that was the PenFed. So we'll put on our note that maybe this one needs to be 852 instead of 825. Okay. On the region, same thing. We're gonna kind of work backwards, so we know to get, if it's interest only, then we would do balance, which is 93,000. Okay. I'm addressing my financial coaches now. Times the interest. Well, we're not going to put this interest 813 because we know that's wrong. Okay. Divided by 12, assuming it's interest only now, because we've already established that not all HELOCs are interest only. Okay, even during the draw period. Okay, equals 837. Okay. All right. So same thing. We would do the 837, at least the way I do it, times 100 times 12. Okay. Equals 93. Whichever way, it doesn't really matter. Okay. All right. So we would arrive at, to get to X, it will be 837 times 100 times 12 divided by the 93,000. Looks like this one should have been 1080. Okay, and again, to verify our numbers, remember it is the balance times the interest divided by 12 to get to the monthly payment charge, which is 837. Okay, just to verify our numbers, so 93,000 times 1080% divided by 12, sure enough, 837. Okay? So now it looks like this one should have been 1080. That's our assumption. But wait a minute. On the board, we see that we have 2 HELOCs, but we don't have, for lack of a better term, a true mortgage on the board. Because an HELOC is also a mortgage, but we don't have a true mortgage on the board, a regular mortgage. Okay? So, another scenario is that maybe these HELOCs includes, because one of them got to be in the first lien position, one of them got to be in the second lien position. Okay? Again, we're talking about traditional HELOCs now, because I know there's another product out there that create all kind of confusion. These guys also call their product HELOCs, but their HELOCs, there's a sweep checking account associated with the HELOCs, integrated with their HELOCs. So there's a lot of confusion with this HELOC thing on YouTube. Okay? So we're talking about traditional HELOC, then you have this other HELOC that these people have with a sweep checking account feature integrated in the HELOC. Okay? And again, these two are traditional HELOC. Anyway, so that would be first lien position if the region HELOC is in first lien position. So maybe this HELOC includes an escrow account for property tax and insurance. Okay? So maybe the 813 is the right number. It just so happened that this HELOC includes an escrow account for property tax and insurance. And again, in very rare occasion, you might find an HELOC that has an escrow account, that has an impound account. Okay, normally they do not have an escrow account. Okay, so maybe the 813 is good. If not, the 1080 would have been the right interest rate. Okay, but 1080 and 813 doesn't look like the client transposed any numbers. So in a situation like this, we're trying to figure out what's going on with these accounts. So maybe there's property tax and insurance, attached to it. An escrow account attached to it. Even though it's an HELOC, like I said earlier, there might still be escrow account attached to it for some banks. Okay? So in this case, it would be the right one. So if we do 93,000 times 813, assuming the 813 is the right answer. Okay? And again, America, I'm talking directly to my financial coach right now. Okay? 813 divided by 12. So that's assuming that the 813 is the right number. Okay, so 93% times 813 divided by 12. So this one should have been 630, but we have 837. So we would do the 837 minus the 630. So it looks like we are 207. Okay? Let me make sure I didn't make any mistake. 93,000 times 813, 8.13% divided by 12. We should be at 630. Perfect. Okay? So the excess probably covered the property tax and insurance, the 207. Okay? Okay? So you would be, the right interest rate, 630 plus an additional 207. So that's how they arrive at the 837. Okay? And monthly minimum payment. And again, the client is on vacation. We cannot get the answers as of yet. Okay? So I just wanted to run that by you guys real quick to, to show you guys how you could figure out these things. Okay? Especially when you be forced to run some numbers, and then but some of the numbers on the boards have possible errors in them. Okay. All right, America, I'll give you about 5-10 seconds to take a look at what the board, and then I'm going to start inserting the question that was asked of me finally, which is can you do an example where you compare your method with Debt Snowball, with Debt Avalanche, with Velocity Banking? Okay, 5-10 seconds, America, and then we're gonna start. All right. Okay. We've already done all that. Now, Debt Snowball. In the book, I describe how I have a love-hate relationship with Debt Snowball. And I talked about how, in the love part, how this method, Debt Snowball, even though their method and my method share two distinct philosophies, their method still complement my method. Okay, that's the love part, and I'm gonna get to that. So now let's talk about the hate part first, because I do have a love-hate relationship with these guys, Debt Snowball, well, with this group. Now we know, looking at the items that we have on the board, we know that Debt Snowball look at the balance. These are the balances, and wants to grab the lowest balance. So in this case, he'll be the 5,000. Okay? Because we have 72, 8, 5, 70, and 93. So they would grab the lowest balance. Okay? And real quick, let me cover 4 grab and go methods with you guys for some of you who missed that lesson. Okay. In previous lesson, I talked about 4 grab and go methods. Okay. And the 4 grab and go methods are Debt Avalanche. Debt Avalanche official name is Debt Avalanche, but internally we refer to Debt Avalanche as a grab and go method. Let me put that on the board. Grab and go method. And we have 4 of them. Okay? So we have Debt Avalanche. And again, to be respectful, Debt Avalanche official name is Debt Avalanche, but internally we refer to it as a grab and go method. Okay? Because of the simplicity of just grabbing the highest APR. So in the case of Debt Avalanche before Debt Snowball, in the case of Debt Avalanche, they'll grab the highest APR, and cash flow 200, that's where you need to go. Okay? So the grab high, highest APR, and cash flow, that's where you need to go, to the highest APR. In this case, cash flow will go to capital 1. Okay? So we're gonna finally, so next, the next grab and go method, that was the first one, is Debt Snowball. So Debt Snowball, look at the balance. They want to grab the lowest balance, which is 5,000. So, and cash flow, that's where you need to go. Okay? So in the case of Debt Snowball, you'll be the lowest balance. Okay? Then the third grab and go method we have, and again, to be respectful, Debt Snowball official name is Debt Snowball, but internally referred to it as grab and go method. Monthly payments charge, these are these guys, MPC, these guys over here. They want to grab the highest monthly payments charged. So in this case of the highest one, let's see, we got 257, 222, 14, and 8. It would have been the 837. And cash flow, that's where you need to go. Okay? So, and finally, we have the payment rates charged. Payment rates charged, they'll grab the highest payment rates charged. And cash flow, that's where you would need to go. Okay? So, real quick, I wanted to cover the full grab and go method in case if I make reference to it, further down during the lesson, I'm not going to confuse anybody. Okay? Again, we have 4 of them: Debt Avalanche, Debt Snowball, monthly payments charge, and payment rates charge. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Everybody else is high except for Debt Snowball, that is lowest. Okay? And because of that simplicity of just grabbing one item and send cash flow to it, everything else, every other account we have on the list receives minimum payment. So for that reason, we refer to them based on their attribute and characteristic as grab and go method. Okay? All right, now let me get back to Debt Snowball, our love and hate relationship. Okay? Now, Debt Snowball will grab the lowest balance, which is 5,000. Okay? And wants to send cash flow towards 5,000. So here we have 5,000. Okay? But on the board, we have, and this one is at 15%. On the board, we have another APR, which is a bigger APR, larger APR, Capital One, at 26.99. Okay? So this is the hate part. Because I have a love-hate relationship with these guys. These guys, this group, their fixation is lower balance, lowest balance, lowest balance, lowest balance. Okay? But look at the difference in interest in APR. If we do 26.99 minus the 15%, should be 11.99, but let's run it one more time so I don't make no mistake. 11.99. So, in essence, you're telling yourself, I'm going to pay a $5,000 at 15% instead of, when everything's said and done, instead of paying $5,000 in here at 26%. So I'm accepting the fact that I'm paying 11.99% more on a debt just so I could attack the lowest balance. Okay? This don't really make no sense. Okay? The next thing they like to say is that momentum. They talk about momentum. They talk about quick wins. And we're going to address these issues. Okay? First of all, on the APR, they register a loss. Okay? Because you cannot, why would you want to get charged 11.99% more every single month on an account just so you could attack the lowest balance? Okay? That's on the APR side. On the payment rate side, which governs how much actual cash flow you receive back, okay? We're assuming this is a flat rate, okay? Well, overall flat rate. So, Navy Federal is at 2.44. But Capital One is at 3.53 for the example that we're using. And again, 3.53 minus 2.44. And again, a difference of 1.09. So you meant to tell me you want to earn 2.44 back in monthly payments charged and cash flow, I should say, instead of earning back, because for every dollar, of payment that you made, this is why you earn back in cash flow, okay? If we're using an overall flat rate, okay? So I'm earning back here 2.44, and I'm earning back there 3.53. So I'm earning more here every time I make a payment to these accounts. So why then should I choose the lower one? Okay? So they register another loss here again. So far that's two losses. They want to earn less. Okay? Because remember now, the Navy Federal is the one with the 15%, the 244. Okay? They want to earn less here, and they want to be charged more there. So two losses. Okay? Now remember, Debt Snowball America, Debt Snowball official name is Debt Snowball. So let's run it real quick. When you're done paying off $5,000, all you're gonna get back after you completely paid off $5,000. All you're gonna get back is the 122, okay? Assuming everything stays the same. Okay? Because remember, we're using a overall flat rate here, so 5,000 times the 2.44 that you're earning back. Because I wanted to spend a little time on this thing, is 122. So that's how much you get back in cash, in additional cash flow, which is the 122. Okay? And what is Debt Snowball big selling feature? We're going to use the cash flow to roll it over into the next lowest debt. So now you're going to have 122 additional to roll over to the next lowest debt. Okay? Now, if you decide to pay the same $5,000 when everything's said and done into the higher APR instead, so it would be the $5,000 into capital one. So that would be 5,000. Remember now, you're earning back for each dollar made, you're earning back 3.53. This one was 2.44. This one is 3.53. Okay, let's see what that is. 5,000 times 3.53. After everything's said and done, you're getting back 176.50 in additional cash flow that you could send towards the next lowest debt if you're doing Debt Snowball. Okay, so now, which one do I want to do? My plan is Debt Snowball. So which means I have a snowball effect. I'm dealing with snowball effect here. So now, do I want a small 122 to go to the next lowest debt? Or do I want after I paid off 5,000? Do I want 176.50 to go towards the next lowest debt? Which one would I prefer, America? 122 in additional cash flow? So in this case, it'll be the 200 plus an additional 122, so it'll be like 322 total to go to the next lowest debt? Or do I want 176.50 to go to the next lowest debt? So that'll be the total of 376.50, because remember, we already have 200. So that'll be additional debt once we pay off the 5,000. So here, I got a higher, bigger snowball effect. Okay, America, my point is, do you want a baby snowball effect to go towards the next lowest debt, 122 additional? Or do you want a true snowball effect to go towards the next debt, 176.50? trying to be respectful to those guys, but doesn't make no sense in this particular scenario to pay off the 5,000. That's only at 15%, so you register a loss here on the APR, okay? And to earn back 2.44, you decide to instead earn back 2.44 instead of 3.53. You register another loss here, okay? So talking about momentum on the snowball effect, you would want the biggest momentum, 176. You wouldn't want the smallest momentum, 122, for paying the Navy Federal. Okay? You don't want to pay the Navy Federal 5,000. You want to pay the Capital One. Okay? Instead, all right? Because you don't want to register two losses at two separate places. Loss here, loss there. Okay? And these folks, they're talking about it's a quick win to pay the low balance. It's a quick win. It's a quick win. Guys, it's not a quick win when you register two losses. It's a quick loss. Okay? Not a quick win. It's a quick loss. Okay? So, I don't give out any kind of participatory trophy when you lose it. It's not a quick win. No participatory trophies here. When you lost, you lost. When you win, you win. Okay? Now, I could create an example whereby I show that Debt Snowball is the winner. Okay? Because remember, they are grab and go methods. Okay? They are not perfect. They are all imperfect method. All the four grab and go method that I touched on earlier, they are all imperfect. The Debt Snowball, imperfect. The Debt Avalanche, imperfect. The monthly payment charge, imperfect. The payment rate charge, imperfect. They are all imperfect. So for that reason, America, I keep telling you guys, do not practice any form of fanaticism when you're paying off debt. Okay? No form of fanaticism, no form of favoritism when it comes to paying off debt. Okay? Because you're hurting yourself in the process. But trying to stay with lowest balance, lowest balance, lowest balance, and register two losses. For what? Oh, psychologically, I feel better. Dude. Look at the statistic. 64% of you guys are living paycheck to paycheck. Okay? And you want to pay the lower balance. For what? So maybe that's the reason why you put up that statistic. So I'm telling myself it's okay to pay a higher APR so I could attack a lower balance. I'm telling myself it's okay to earn the smallest snowball effect when my plan is Debt Snowball. So I could pay a lowest balance. Nah. Okay? 468% of you guys cannot come up with $400 emergency. Maybe that's the reason. You're paying $11.99 additional and you're complaining that you don't have $400 emergency, but you choose, nobody forces you, but you choose to pay $11.99 in additional APR interest, register two losses on the APR side and on the cash flow side. Okay? This is not momentum, folks. This is going backwards. Okay? Snowball effect, 122. Snowball effect to the next lowest debt, 176. How beautiful. Okay? That's the hate part when it comes to these guys. Now, online, you have those guys on TV, on the radio. I'm not talking about the representative of Debt Snowball, the owner of Debt Snowball. I'm talking about other people now. These people are supposed to be personal finance gurus. And they all regurgitating the same thing. It's a quick win when you pay the lowest balance. It's a quick win. It's a quick win. Whether you're online, same thing. Whether you're on TV, you're hearing them. They're making millions on TV. It's a quick win. Paying up the lowest balance, it's a quick win. Now, in some situation, it might be a quick win, But in this particular example, that's a quick loss, America. Okay. So on TV, same thing, quick win. On the radio, it's a quick win when you pay the lowest balance. On social media, they type in the same stuff. They're like parrot. It's a quick win. It's a quick win. It's not a quick win, folks. It's a quick loss in this particular example. Now again, there are some examples where Debt Snowball will come on top, or at least a tie, if not on top. Okay? That was the hate part of our love-hate relationship. Okay? America, do not pay the lowest balance if it is proven not to be the best approach. When it's the best approach, absolutely pay the lowest balance. When it's not the best approach, you stay away from it. You go to another method. Remember, we got 4 of them. Debt Snowball, Debt Avalanche, monthly payment charge, and payment rate charge. We got 4 of them. Okay? And again, Debt Avalanche deal with the APR. Debt Snowball deal with the balance. Monthly payment charge would deal with the monthly payment charge, and the payment rate charge deal with the payment rate charge. Okay? All right. That was the hate part. Now, where's the love, James? Okay. By the way, let me give you 5 seconds before I get to the love part. All right, America. All right. Well, here's the love part, guys. That snowball is to attack the lowest balance first. Now, since they're attacking the lowest balance and you send it in extra cash flow, which account will get you to 0 faster? Now they're talking. To get to 0 faster would be the Navy Federal. Okay, so there'll be that snowball still. Okay. Get to 0 faster. Okay. And again, attacking the lower balance and sending cash flow towards it, extra payment towards it, will get you to 0 faster because it's the lowest balance. Now, what is the representative or the owners of Debt Snowball telling you, America? They are telling you as soon as you get to 0, or even before you get to 0, go ahead, cut up the credit card. Okay? Cut up the credit card. Okay? Now, I agree with that 99% of the time. There are some exceptions whereby I still want someone to have at least 1 credit card. Okay? I have multiple myself, but I'm saying if you're going to follow that rule, but at least have 1 credit card. And what do I mean by that? Well, some people, we know there are certain things that you cannot do on a debit card. Okay? And some folks cannot handle the stress of having to deal with that kind of issue every time they try to do certain transactions, for lack of better terms. Okay? So for these people, hey, they cannot handle the stress of every time they have to do certain type of transactions. Okay? They are asked to use a credit card instead. Those are transactions where they cannot use their debit card. Okay? So for that reason, okay, I would prefer these folks, if they're following the Debt Snowball plan, to at least have 1 credit card total. And the restriction I would put on it is that So one credit card per person. Okay. If you are a couple, husband and wife, so it's gonna be 2 credit card total because it's 1 credit card per person. So, okay. Okay. Husband has his credit card, wife got his credit card. Now, should they have a joint account instead, James? No. With all the stuff that are going on, not everybody is spiritually grounded. With all the divorce, all the separation and everything else, each person got their own credit card. Now, on the checking account, it could be a joint account or not a joint account. Joint or not, doesn't matter. Okay? On the checking account side. Because it's easier to get out. Let's say in the case of a divorce, a separation, or whatever else, because not everybody is spiritually grounded. Not just on the spiritual side. Just, even spiritual folks are not spiritually grounded. Some spiritual folks anyways. So joint account on the checking account, or no joint account on the checking account, doesn't matter to me. But on the credit card side, okay? At least one credit card per person, at least. Okay? And that credit card has to have the lowest credit limit. So low credit limit. Okay? That way, even if you messed up, it's a low credit limit. So we're here now. Even when you messed up, say the credit limit is so low to where you're not gonna hurt yourself too much. So these will be the condition. At least 1 credit card per person if you're gonna follow that plan, if I was following that plan. And the credit limit will be a low limit. Okay? And on the checking account, it could be joint or not joint, but this one, it's separate. Everybody got their own credit card. Okay? Alright? And again, it's easier to get out of a joint checking account than it is to get out of a joint credit card. Okay? It's easier to get out here than it is to get out there. So for that reason, each person got their own credit card because it's much harder to get out of a joint account when you have a credit card. Much harder. Okay? To get out. If it's a joint account. Okay? So for that reason, each person again, 1 credit card. Alright? Now, the love part. Because the representative or the owners of Debt Snowball is telling their camp to cut off the credit card. What does that do to the big creditors? Okay? Big banks are not going to make no money. Okay? Remember, they're making billions of credit cards. Whether it's the credit card itself or all the fees that it's $1 billion business. So by cutting off the credit card, so he's attacking the big banks, the big creditors, one way. He's attacking them. Okay? And we know majority of Americans do have a credit card. Okay? So I'm on the other side. And now I'm dealing with the folks that have credit cards. With my method will give you the greatest results in terms of reducing interest costs. So I'm attacking the big bank, the big creditors on the interest cost side. Okay? So they are making less revenue, from the folks who will be using my method. Okay? So on the interest cost side, okay? So we're attacking them that way. That's an important source of revenue. Okay? So that's one way on the interest cost side. And the other way I'm attacking them is showing you guys how to execute balance transfers when you fired the big bank, the big creditors. Okay? And one of my techniques that I call Ambroise's charge, pay technique. And I got two variations of it. One is normal, one is inducement. Okay? I got two variations of this. Okay? So remember, on the transfer side, from past lessons, I could cover with you guys invoice charge pay technique, normal, and invoice charge pay technique, inducement. Okay? These two are ways of executing balance transfers where you do not need the help of the big bank, the big creditors. So you could still do your balance transfer without the big bank, the big creditors. So you don't need Chase to do your balance transfer. You don't need Capital One to do your balance transfer. You don't need Bank of America to do your balance transfers. Okay? You don't need these guys to do your balance transfer. You could still execute your own balance transfer. And what does that do? It takes away another source of revenue from the big bank, the big creditors. Remember, banks earn billions of dollars in fees doing these things. Billions. So, in essence, I'm disrupting a billion-dollar business with my method, teaching you guys how to do balance transfers without the help of the big bank, the big creditors. So they're earning zero to the extent that you can when you are able to do these two types of balance transfers. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Okay? But when you can, okay, you're disrupting this billion-dollar business. Okay? So the love part, they're attacking Debt Snowball, attacking the big bank, the big creditors one way by telling you to cut up the credit card. Okay? So now no credit card, they can't make no money off of you. And here, if you still do have credit cards, so we're trying to reduce, how much interest costs you're being charged, how much interest you're being charged. That's one way, because our method will offer you. Okay, no doubt, our method is second to none when it comes to that stuff. We'll offer you the greater results in terms of reducing interest costs. So that's one way. And the second way, we're teaching you about invoice charge pay technique. Okay? All right, America, I'll give you about 5-10 seconds to take a look at what's on the board. And then we're going to start with the exercise. All right, America. Remember the question that was posed to me was, James, can you show us an example where you quickly run your method against Debt Snowball, Debt Avalanche? Okay. So now, because Debt Snowball attacked the lowest balance first, in this case it will be the Navy Federal 5,000. So cash flow is only 2,000 here. So for cash flow, it will be 2,000. And for the account, you'll be Navy Federal, because Navy Federal has the lowest balance. So cash flow goes to Navy Fed. Okay? Now that avalanche, just like Debt Snowball in our observation section, only uses cash flow. But instead, these folks wants to attack the highest APR. So it would be 200 for cash flow. Because remember, that's all they use. They only use cash flow. So 200 going to the highest APR. In this case, will be capital 1. Okay. Now, velocity banking. Velocity banking doesn't only use cash flow. These guys, this group, they chunk and they also use a debt weapon in addition to cash flow. Okay? So now, let's quickly run velocity banking to find out what the result's gonna be on our observation section. Okay? Now, these folks usually have two formulas. They have cash flow. And the next formula that they use is since there are HELOCs on the board, they'll take a look at the HELOC as well. Just by looking at cash flow is only $200. So cash flow is too small, not comparable. So for that reason, they'll move over to the HELOC. But James, on the HELOC, we have two separate HELOCs. But when we look at the availability, we see that one has 1,000 and the other one, America, has 6,000. So more than likely, they will use the region's HELOC with 6,000. Another issue that might present itself is that these guys normally want to go up to 80%. In some of the videos that I see online, they want to go up to 80%. But we're already at 93, 94. So in a scenario like this, I would not truly know how much of the 6,000 they'll be willing to use towards paying off debt. Okay? For that reason, just so we have an apple-to-apple comparison, okay, I'll go with the percentage that I would go if I was doing my method, Ambroise Method 1.0. Because remember, they only want to go 80 in most of the examples that I've seen on YouTube. Okay? Doing my research section, because I had to do research on these groups. Okay? So, and again, we don't have anybody to say, well, you want a higher credit limit, a higher credit utilization, that's why your number was slightly better. So for that reason, we're going to use the same number that I would use on mine. Okay, and on mine, I'll go all the way up to 98.5%. Okay, on the region. So for that reason, we also make them go 98.5%. Because remember, our method, we are very aggressive in trying to get rid of debt. Okay? The biggest enemy is capital 1. The troublemaker is capital 1. So we're trying to do anything that we could do to move our debt to a better, lower interest rate environment. Okay? So if we're going up to 98.5%, so region is 99,000 already. So it will be 99,000 times 98.5%, which means, let me grab my calculator. So when we do, to see what's the max, 98,000 times 50%, because remember we're very aggressive, that will give us 97,515. Okay? But they already owe on the region HELOC 93,000. So 93,000. So now we are left with 4515 that we could use towards paying off debt. And again, the max we're willing to go is 98% of the credit limit, which gives us 97,515. That's the max. But we already owe 93,000. So 97,515 minus the 93,000. So now we are at 45.15. Okay. All right. With 45.15, what we'll do, these guys, now we're mimicking what Velocity Banking might be doing. They'll use that 45.15 to pay down the highest APR, which is Capital One in this case. Okay. So now let's run Velocity Banking. Okay, on the Capital One and on the Regions HELOC. Okay, so for Capital One, the credit limit will be, let me kind of move my body out the way. The credit limit will be 8,000. The APR will stay the same, 26.99. Now the balance, remember, these folks, Velocity Banking, they want to use 45.15 towards paying off debt. So now the balance for the Capital One will be reduced by the 45.15. Okay? So now we're at 72.74 minus the 45.15. Okay, so now the new balance will be 2759. Okay, and the monthly payment charge. Now the monthly payment charge is gonna change now. Okay, remember it's 3.53%. Okay, so now we have 2759 times the overall flat rate, 3.53%, divided by so now we are 97, I'm sorry, 97. Okay, so the monthly payments charge changes from 257 to 97. Again, let me run that number one more time, making sure I don't make no mistakes. 2759 times let me do the first one first, 72.74 minus the 45.15. Okay, so 3.53%. Perfect, $97. Now the availability now, remember availability is credit limit 8,000 minus balance owed 2759. So 8,000 America minus 2759. So now we're at 5241. 8,000 minus 2759. 5241. Okay, now credit utilization is balance owed divided by credit limit. So 2759 divided by 8,000. So it should be at 3449. And the payment rate charge, obviously, monthly payment charge divided by that, it should be the 353. But let's run it just for good measure. It should be the 97 divided by 2759. And again, that's how we will arrive at the 353. Okay. Now, the next item on the board is the USA. And again, they only have 45.15 to use to pay off debt. So USA is going to stay the same. We did not touch that. So 9,000, 22.15, 80.10, 225, 990, 89%, 281. Okay. Next item will be the Navy Federal. Again, they did not not touch that, so the effect stays the same. 25,000, 15, 5,000, 122, 20,000, 20, and 244. Okay? And the next item is the pen fed. We did not touch the pen fed, so pen fed stays the same. 71, 825. We did not touch pen fed, America. 70, 497, 1,000, 9859, and 0.71. And the next item is Regions HELOC. $99,000, 813, 93. Now we did move 4515, so now the regions, 4515 will be added to the balance for the regions. Remember, we use 4515 to send towards the capital one, so now that balance will be increased by the 4515. So it should be 93. 45, I'm sorry, 97, 515. Okay, let's run it. 97, 515. Okay, so that's from 93,000 plus the 4515, because remember that balance got increased by the 4515, so 97, 515. Okay. Now for monthly payment, remember there was an error to where we couldn't get a hold of the client because the client is on vacation. So we don't know what the right interest rate is. So for that reason, we still got to put something on the board, so we're going to go with the 90 payment rate. So let's do 97, because we know this one is good, but this one we don't know what's going on there. So for that reason, let's go for the one that we know. And then later on, we could make adjustment when we get a hold of the client to figure out what was going on with these two accounts. Okay? Because remember earlier when we run the interest rate on them, everything was off. Okay? So that's 97,515 times 0.90%. And again, that is not how these things are calculated, but for this reason, we go with the payment rate. Normally, it's with the interest, and that's how it's being calculated. But we know that the interest is wrong, so if we already know it's wrong, there's no way for us to run the numbers on something that we already know it's wrong, okay? Until we could get a hold of the client to make the adjustment, okay? So we should be at 878, okay? Now, the availability now gonna change, okay? Because availability is the credit limit minus balance owed. The balance owed got increased. So the availability now becomes 99,000 minus 97,515. So we should be at 1485. And credit utilization is balance owed divided by credit limit. So 97,515, we should arrive at that, excuse me, at the 9850 divided by 99,000. So that's how we get the 9850%. And again, we say it was 90%, which is the monthly payments charge 878 divided by the balance owed 97,515. That's how we get to the 90%. Okay? Now that's doing velocity banking. Okay? Now, the next step these guys might do is to start running velocity banking on the account that they just chunk out of. Okay? So for chunk, they've used Regents HELOC in our observation section. So for chunk, they'll use the Regents HELOC. Okay. For debt weapon, you know, these guys, they do practice favoritism. So whichever account that they do, they chunk out of, that's the same account they're going to use for debt weapon. So you'll be the same Regents HELOC. Okay. Now for cash flow. Now, cash flow, let's see what happened with cash flow. Because the two account that we touched was Capital One. And the next account we touched was Regents. These were the two accounts that we touched. So let's see how much cash flow. So initially we had 257, and we had, for the region, we had 837. But now we have minus, so 257 plus 837 minus, that's why we had earlier, because remember, we're only dealing with these two accounts for now. So 257 plus 87 minus the new numbers that we have now. Capital One becomes 97, so minus the 97. And minus the 878. And again, we're dealing with those two accounts. Minus the 878. So we should have 119. And additional cash flow. Okay? And again, we're only dealing with these two accounts, so we add what we had originally minus what we have now to find out what's the overall cash flow gains. Okay, America? So 119. Now, the original cash flow was 200, so now cash flow got increased by 119. So now we had 200 plus the 119. So now we have 319 in cash flow. Okay. So 319, and again, which account they'll use to keep the cash flow, it'll be the same account that they chunk out of. Because remember, these folks practices what I call favoritism or fanaticism. Well, in this case, it's favoritism. 319. So Regents HELOC. For account, it's the Regents HELOC. And again, they use the Regents HELOC everywhere. Okay? Okay? And that was Velocity Banking. As you could see real quick, their cash flow, for this particular example, they're in a better position than the other guys for this particular example. Okay? So they had 319, the other folks were at 200 or 200 and 200. Okay? Now, that was Velocity Banking. Now, Ambroise Method 1.0. James, what would Ambroise 1.0 looks like? Okay? Remember, you know what? Let me give you guys 5-10 seconds to take a look at the board before I start with Ambroise Method 1.0. All right, America. Now, Ambroise Method 1.0. Earlier, we talked about how our method, Ambroise Method 1.0, calls for a series of steps that needs to be taken at least once a month. So a series of steps that needs to be taken monthly. Okay? And each month, you repeat the same steps. January, same step. February, you repeat them again, same step. March, same step. So each month you repeat those steps. Okay? The first steps was to segregate. And how do we segregate? We segregate by same account type. Okay. Revolving with revolving, an installment with installments. Okay? So that would be, on our board we have credit card, HELOC, HELOC. So these are all revolving account because those HELOCs has draw period. Remember from previous lesson, when the HELOC has draw period, it's revolving. When the HELOC is in the repayment period, it is not revolving because you cannot use it and reuse it during the repayment period. Okay? So they are all, the HELOCs have draw period, the credit cards, so the credit cards are already revolving, so they are all revolving. Okay? So the list is already perfect. So to segregate, we don't need to segregate because it's already done for us. Okay? But if we had some different things in there, some installment accounts in there, then we'll have to segregate further. Okay? So in this case, segregation is already done. Okay? Now, the next step is to compare. And we compare by APR against each other. So we're looking at the APR, 26.99, 22, 15.8, and 8. So now we know the highest APR is Capital One, 26.99, and the lowest APR is Regions, 8.13. Okay? So keep that in mind. When we compare them against each other, we're trying to look for the highest one, absolute highest one, and the absolute lowest one. That's how we compare them. Okay? Next step on our method, so far we haven't done anything. We're just rearranging the list. That's all we're doing. Okay? So if the APR were in some kind of weird order, maybe we'll do descending order or ascending order. We're just trying to put some kind of order. That's all we're doing. So the first two steps, segregate and compare. Okay? And in this case, the list is perfect. The highest one's on top, the next highest one, the next highest one, the next highest, finally the lowest one. Okay? But if he was not, then we'll try to change it and put some kind of order. Okay? So far we've segregated, so far we've compared. Next is to transfer. Remember, the third step is to transfer. And how do we transfer? We transfer back from highest APR into the lowest APR. Okay? Now let's do the transfer. Well, the transfer in this particular example, because some example you might be different, but in the particular example, that's exactly what Velocity Banking did. They transfer from the highest APR into the lowest APR. In this case, they chunk, and they chunk from the 8.13 to the 26.99. So in essence, they move the balance, the 72.7 balance, okay, well, by 45.15, they move the 45.15 from here to there. That's why this one got decreased by 45.15, so it becomes 27.59, and that's why the region HELOC got increased by the 45.15, so it becomes 97.15. Okay? So in this particular example, they have the same steps that we have. And again, it's not always the same step. Okay? So ours will look like this, just like them, for this particular example. Next is to repeat. Remember, we segregate, we transfer, we compare, transfer, we execute the first transfer, and then we repeat. These are some of our steps. So we transfer when it makes math or number sense. In this case, it did make math and number sense, so we did transfer. Now we have to repeat the process of comparing and transferring. Okay? So now we are here now. Let's compare again, so we could do transfer again. So now we segregate again. It's already segregated. We compare. 26.99, 8.13. Okay? But on this one, that one's already saturated, so we cannot use the 8.13 anymore. It's already saturated. You see the credit limit? We are close to the max, so we have to be careful with that one. So this one is saturated. Okay? You can no longer do transaction on it. So in this case, we move to the next lowest APR. Because remember, we still have balance in the higher APR. And the way we transfer is from highest APR into the next lowest APR for maximum interest savings. Okay? So now this one is done. We cannot use it any longer because we're close to maxing out. Okay? The availability is too small. Okay? So now we move to the next highest one. The next highest one is with the PenFed HELOC. So, but when we look at the availability and the credit limit, we only have 1,000 and we have 98.59. So these are too close. So we cannot use the PenFed HELOC. So now we have to move from the next highest one to the next lowest one. Okay? For maximum interest savings, it's always absolute highest to the absolute lowest to the extent that you can. Okay? So now the next highest one is this one. The highest one and the next lowest one is the Navy Federal. Let's take a look at the availability. $20,000 America. So we have room on this one. Okay? We have room on this one, so that's where we're going to make our next transfer. And again, we're always trying to relocate balances from the highest APR card account into the lowest APR account for maximum interest savings. We're always trying to relocate. Whether the bank is offering balance transfers or not, we don't care. We're still trying to relocate. That is why our method is filled with numerous strategies and techniques to show you guys, especially on the transfer side, to show you guys how to transfer even when the bank does not want to offer you balance transfers, or the balance transfer from the bank is too high. Okay? So our method filled with different kind of transfer. We got normal transfer with the bank, mix and match transfer with the bank. In addition to those transfer from the bank, we also have artificial type of transfer, and we also have plastic, which is another artificial type of transfer. So, okay, we're not handicapped by what the bank could do for us. We could still execute our own balance transfer because our goal is to reduce the sample overall APR, average APR. So the sample overall average APR, which is these, we're trying to reduce it. Okay, so we could save the maximum interest savings. So transfer. We transfer heavy on our method because that's how we save the most money. In addition to the other stuff we're doing. Okay, revolutionary, 3 alternative account, cash flow. In addition to all the different things we're doing. Okay, we're trying to concentrate on transfer. Because we hate babysitting higher APR balances. We don't want to babysit these guys. Okay? When the other method using cash flow babysitting the higher APR, okay? We do not like to babysit the higher APR. Whenever we see the higher APR, that's the enemy. That's the troublemaker. So that's the one we need to attack. Okay? We don't want to pay any higher APR than we need to the extent that we can. Okay? So that's why we transfer heavy on our method. Okay? So now, it so happened that all the credit cards offering balance transfers, and the balance transfer is capped at 75%. Okay? So in this case, we might use them. But again, if they did not offer us balance transfers, and we see 20,000 available from a lower APR, we're trying to relocate the higher APR into the lower APR. So we'll we'll do other type of balance transfer like I said earlier. Okay? So, the balance transfer is capped at 75% on all the credit cards. So we have 25,000. So let's figure out what that is. And by the way, let's see what the average is on the APR. Because we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5 APR on the board. We got a 26.99. We got a 22.15. We got a 15%. We got 8.25. We got 8.13. Let's find out real quick what's the sample average on the APR. So this one 2699 plus 2215 plus 15% plus 825 plus 813. So we are 8052. But how many items do we have? 1 item, 2 items, 3 items, 4 items, 5 items. So 8052 divided by 5 items. So we had the average, simple average APR. That is 1610. Okay? 1610.04. Okay? That's average APR. When you add all the APR divided by the number of APR, okay, we had 16.104%. Okay? And remember, by transferring, we're trying to put some order into things to reduce our average. Okay? So Debt Snowball average would be, in this case, Debt Snowball as well, it would be the 1610.04%. Because these guys only use cash flow. Velocity banking, we just did velocity banking. These guys' average will be the 1016, so it'll be the same thing. And that Avalanche only uses cash flow, so their average, because these guys, they don't take advantage of balance transfers, their average will be the same, 16.104. Okay? So all these guys, they have the same average. Okay? All right. Now, remember earlier for our method, we segregate, compare, transfer, repeat. So now let's try to repeat. Okay? And again, this is all above the line. We still haven't come below the line. We haven't talked about alternative account yet. We haven't talked about cash flow yet. All we're doing, we're rearranging our list first before we start going to the A, to the C. So now we're still doing the T for transfer. Okay? Remember our TAC, TAC. The T is above the line, and we stay above the line for as long as we can until it's fully exhausted. Then we move below the line, which is the A and the C. Okay? Right now we're still above the line because there's still opportunity to transfer some more. Okay? So now, they're willing to go 75% cap. So now Navy Federal would be 25,000 times 7% cap, 75% cap. So the max you could go on balance transfer is 25,000. Remember, all credit card offers balance transfer and they are capped at 75%. So we should be at 18,750 on the Navy Federal. But we already owe 5,000 on the Navy Federal. So the max we could go is 13,750. So now, America, we have 13,750 that we could use towards paying off debt. Okay? Well, let's see what's on the board. We're right here now. We're doing Navy Federal. Okay? The highest one above Navy Federal is a Capital One and the USAA. We're here. So Capital One has a balance of 2759. So we'll use some of the 13,750 to get rid of the Capital One. Okay? So we'll relocate 2759 from the higher APR. Remember, we hate high APR balances, balances with higher APR. So we're trying to always relocate them to the lowest APR. So 2759, because we don't like to babysit higher APR. Okay? 2799, we're going to relocate it to the Navy Federal. Okay? And do we still have room? After that, we'll still have room. Okay? So let's do that one first. minus the 27,959. So we'll still have room because the 2 and the 8 is only 10, 10,769, but we have 13 available. So we have room to knock out not only capital 1, we also have room in the 13,750 to knock out the USA. Okay, so we're gonna knock out these two. Okay? So now, this is what Ambroise method will look like. Okay, that's the second step, which is repeating the transfer. First, we did a transfer that looks similar to velocity banking. That was the first transfer. Now we continue to do transfer, because we always want to relocate, like I said, from higher APR to lower APR. So now, on the next transfer, this is our starting point now, because we already did one transfer, so we're here now. On the next transfer, we're dealing with these accounts. Okay, so capital 1. Credit limit stays the same, 8,000, because we're here now. We're here. APR 26.99. Balance owed. Now remember, we're using 13,755 from part of 13,755 from Navy Federal to knock out the 2759 to get rid of it. So now this new balance is going to become 0. So the monthly payment charge, the balance is 0. The monthly payment charge will be 0, at least on paper. Okay. The availability now, availability is credit limit minus the balance owed, so 8,000 minus the 0, so we have 8,000. Okay. The credit utilization is balance owed divided by credit limit, so 0 divided by 8,000, so we had 0. And the payment rate charged, America, is monthly payments charged divided by balance owed. So 0 divided by 0, so now we have 0. Okay. Next item on the list is the USAA. Okay. That is running Ambroise Method 1.0. 9,000, credit limit, 9,000. APR stays 22.15. Now the balance owed, remember, we're gonna use part of the 1350 to get rid of the 8010. Okay, so that balance is gonna become 0. Where am I? USA, I'm right here. So the 8010 gonna become 0. The 225 monthly payment charge, so now the balance is 0, the monthly payment charge will be 0, at least on paper. And the availability, it was 990. Availability is credit limit minus balance owed, so 9,000 minus 0, so now we are at 9,000. You see? And where am I? Credit utilization. Credit utilization is balance owed divided by credit limit. So 0 divided by 9,000, so we at 0. And the payment rate charge is monthly payments charge divided by balance owed. So 0 divided by 0, we at 0. Okay. So these were the two accounts, because remember now, we're over here now, we're dealing with these 3 accounts. So far, we zero out that account by 2759, we zeroed that account by 8010, okay, which means that the next account, Navy Federal, will get increased by these amounts, okay? So next account is Navy Federal. Credit limit 25,000. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. 25,000. APR 15%. The balance owed, now it was 5,000. Remember, we used 2759 to zero out the Capital One, and we also use 8010 to zero out the USA. So the 5,000 will get increased by the 2759 and by the 8010. Okay, so it'll be 5,000. We use 2759 to zero out that one, so you'll get increased by the 2759. And we also use part of it to get out of that one, so you'll get increased by the 8010. Okay, so now we at 15,769. Okay. All right. So out of the 13,750, we only used up to the 810 and the 20. Let me do that one more time. The 810 and the 2759. So we used up only 8, 10, 7, 6, 9 only. That's all we've done. Okay? We had 13 max that we could go, but we didn't have to go that far to the max because the remainder balance was only 2759 for the Capital One. The remainder balance for the USA was 8010. Okay? All right, so now we're here now, 15,769. Monthly payments charge. Now monthly payments charge, remember, for Navy Federal, 123, it's 244. So it's 15,769 times 244, 385. So now the monthly payment charge got increased, America, from 122 to 385, because remember we add some more stuff to that balance. So the balance went up, the monthly payment will go up. Okay, 385. Okay. The availability, remember availability is a relationship between the credit limit and the balance owed. That relationship calls for a subtraction operation. So 25,000 America minus the 15,769. Okay. 15,769. So now for availability, we're down to 92.31. Okay. Credit utilization is balance owed divided by credit limit. So 15,769 divided by 25,000. So we at 63.08. And the payment rate charge obviously going to stay the 2.44, but let's run it just for good measure. Payment rate charge is monthly payment charge divided by balance owed. So 385 divided by the 15,769. So it should be at the 244 that we knew it was. Okay. And again, the second time around, we've only dealt with these three accounts. Okay, so which means that the pen fed will stay the same, because now we've done. Remember, the pen fed, we're close to maxed out on the pen fed, so we couldn't use them. Okay, because they reached the saturation point. Okay, these two accounts, they're too close to the up to 100%. Okay, and again, our method is a very aggressive method. Look how high we go. We don't go 80%. Okay. Now, remember, there might be impact to credit score, because sometimes, if credit score is important to you, okay, and we cover that in our event priority. When, say for example, you try to buy a house, the mortgage broker is telling you, hey, your debt to income ratio, is not in line. So in this case, we'll go a different route, because now we have an event priority, which is debt to income ratio. So we kind of stop the normal process that the way we normally do things, to attack that event priority. And again, an event priority in an event is an event that takes precedence over everything else. Okay. Same thing if we're dealing with a mortgage broker. and they're telling us that, hey, it's not your debt to income ratio that's the problem, it's your credit score that's the problem. See, that's another event priority. So we'll stop whatever we're doing, okay? Just minimum payment, and we'll concentrate on that item, which is the event priority. Sometimes you might get a letter from IRS saying, hey, you owe this much money, okay? Now, with IRS, we got two different type of penalties plus interest. We got failure to file penalty, failure to pay penalty, interest. So all those things, for those reasons, that's an event priority. So we'll stop whatever else we're doing and concentrate on that event. Okay, so that's why we call them event priority. So that event will take precedence, okay, over everything else. So we'll stop doing Ambroise Method 1.0 and start concentrating more so on the event priority, okay? Well, we'll still do Ambroise Method 1.0, but we'll gear all our effort towards the event. Anyways, so now the next item on the list after Navy Federal is Penn Fed. $71,825. %. 70,000. 497. We did not touch Penn Fed 1,000. So Penn Fed stays the same. 98.59. 0.71%. Okay. And next item is regions. So the second time around, we did not touch regions. $99,813. $97,515. Where am I? Right here. 878. 1485. 9850. And 0.090%. Okay? So far, that was segregating the steps, segregate, compare, transfer, and then repeat. We repeat the transfer again. So this is two transfer now. This is one, this is two. Okay? And remember, this is items that are above the line. Now, can we do more transfer? Well, these are already gone. These are already gone. So the highest one we have left is, because these are zero balances now, the highest we have left is the highest APR, because remember we always want to transfer from highest APR into lowest APR. Well, the highest APR now we have is just the Navy Federal, 15%. The lowest APR is 813, but remember, these, we've already reached saturation point in those, okay? They've already maxed out, or close to maxed out, so we can use them, okay? And again, the highest is 15, the lowest is 813, but we cannot use the 813 any longer because we're already at 9850. Okay, close to max out. Only 1,485 left, close to max out, so we don't want to touch it. Okay, so now we'll go from the highest to the next lowest. The highest now is 15, the next lowest is 825. And same thing on the 825, we've already maxed out. 9850 now, 1,000. So now, everything now has been exhausted. We cannot do any more transfer. We cannot do any more moves. Okay? Now we move from the above the line item into the below the line item, which is to ask the questions. Okay? You see that? So you transfer, you don't stop transferring. If it still makes number math sense, you keep transferring until you fully exhausted, all the transfer has been completely and fully exhausted. Then you move to the other items that are below the line. Okay? You do not go below the line until you're completely done with the items that are above the line, which is the segregate, the compare, the transfer, the repeat. Okay? So the item above the line is completely done. We have no more opportunity to transfer. Now we're going to ask ourselves the questions. Can we use cash flow? So now let's figure out how much the cash flow is for our method. And we're going to also do the average APR on our method. So average APR and cash flow. Let's do cash flow first. Okay? Originally we were at, so this one is 159. So the only two account we touched, the only three account was, we touched this one, we touched that one, and we also touched the Navy Federal. These are the three accounts that get affected during the second transfer when we repeat. And initially we were here, here, and here. Okay? So now let's find out how much additional cash flow we got. So we have the 97 plus we had the 225. We're talking about the monthly payments now. Plus the 122. So we had 444 minus the new payment, 385. So we have an additional cash flow of 59. Okay? So altogether, we had 200, 119 plus 59 additional cash flow. So let's see what we got. 200 plus cash flow went up during the first transfer by 119, and cash flow also went up by during the second transfer, 59. So now we have 378. Okay? 378. All right. Now, let's cover the average APR on our method. We got 26.99. This one is 0 now, so we no longer have this one. This one is 0 now, so we no longer have that one. So now we have 15. That's why we have left, because we already got rid of Capital One and USA. They are zero balances, at least on paper. So 15% plus 825 plus 813. So we had 3138. How many items do we have to get an average? We have one item, two items, three items. So 3138 divided by 3. So now our simple average APR is 1046. Oh my, 1046%. America, take a look. Just by rearranging, we organize. Their average is 16.1004. 10.4. Debt Snowball 16.10.4 for average, simple average APR. That Avalanche, same thing, 16.10.04. Velocity Banking, their average 16.104, same thing. Look at our average APR that we are being charged, 10.46, which gives us a difference in interest in APR savings of, so you'll be the 16,104 or 1610 minus our 1046. Okay, let's see what that is. So 1610 minus the 1046. So we got a net gain above these guys, a net difference of 564. And again, that was just from rearranging. We organize our debt. We haven't even touched cash flow. The cash flow is still there. We haven't even started using it yet. Okay? This is just for transferring. Okay? Just for transferring only. Okay? We're in a better position already than the other method. Remember, the APR, the interest, is the cost of borrowing. This is borrowed money over here. Borrowed money. What would you want, America? A higher APR, so you ended up paying more on the borrowed money, or a lesser APR to where you ended up paying less on your borrowed money by a difference of 5.64. Okay? As you could see, this method, the debt snowball, the debt avalanche, the velocity banking will never, ever be able to compete with our method, Ambroise Method 1.0. Okay? That is why we're trying to reorganize first before we do anything. These guys, they're so concerned about cash flow. They jump into the cash flow right away. After all, they are a grab and go method, so they have to do what they have to do. That avalanche, and again, they jump into cash flow right away. After all, they are a grab and go method, so they don't have no other tools. These guys, they do have other tools, but they're using the other tools in some cases improperly. Okay? Look at them, still 16,104. Okay? Look at us. Just from the get-go, I haven't done anything yet. I've already surpassed them. Well, James, by how much? Well, let's find out. Okay? Remember, the total debt is 183,284. So if you're being charged an average of 16,1004 all the way across, 16,1004, 16,1004, 16,1004. I mean 16,1004. It's just 16,10. Okay? On that debt, well, let's see what it is. Remember, the debt is 183,284. 183,284 times 16,104. Let's just say 16,10 to keep it simple. So it would be 29. Before we even start, it would be, let me see, 29,508. Look at us. 1046. And again, the debt is 183,284. Times ours is average APR. Okay, that's the cost for borrowing the total debt. That's the cost on the total debt, 1046%. So our cost would be on our side, before we even do anything, it would be 19,171. They are 29. Their cost is 29. Those three guys, 29,508. Our cost is 19,171. So let's see what that is. 29,508 minus 19,171. Our cost. So we save an additional 10,337 over these guys. Okay? The game haven't even started. We're already ahead of them by 10,337. Okay? Well, up to that amount. Okay, once they start making payment, things might change, but you know, up to that amount, we're already ahead. Okay, and the way you get it is the difference 564, because remember that's the difference in savings times the debt. It would be the same thing. So you'll be like 183, 284. That was the total debt originally times 5.64. We should arrive at the same number, which is the 10,337. Okay, so that the debt times the difference in savings that I'm doing above them should record that. That's how much I'm ahead. Up to that much already. Okay, Debt Snowball, already I'm ahead. Before the game even starts, I'm already ahead of them by 10,337, up to that amount. That Avalanche, before the game even starts, I'm already, well, before the fight, it's not a game, it's a fight. Before the fight even starts, I'm ahead of them by 10,337. Velocity Baking, before the fight, because remember, America, it's a fight against debt. This is where we are, okay? 64% of us paycheck to paycheck. So, okay, we got to look at it like it's a fight. And 68% we can come up with a $400 emergency. Now, how many $400 emergency can you find inside this savings? 10,337. Inside that savings, how many $400 would you find? So, doing my method, I'll pull you completely out of that statistic, because my goal, my primary goal, well, part of my goal is to improve that statistic, okay? All my effort, everything that I'm doing, okay? Dealing with these other groups, dealing with banks. When I'm attacking, I'm disrupting the billion-dollar business, which in a way gonna put me enemy number one to those big banks, the big creditors. They're not gonna like it, man, when you guys learn how to do balance transfers where you don't need the big bank, the big creditors. They're not gonna like it, okay? So in a way, there will be a target on my back just for teaching you just that one simple technique. Ambroise's charge pay technique, and we have two variations of it, normal and inducement. In addition, I'm showing you how to reduce your overall interest cost, okay? When I run those numbers, they're not gonna be too happy with me, okay? This guy come out of nowhere and start doing these things, you know, never heard of, okay? All kind of new technique, new strategies, revolutionary things. They are not gonna be happy with me, okay? But I don't care, you know? I want to reduce this statistic, okay? It is my goal to work for the little guy. Now remember, now our method is inclusively helpful for everybody. Rich Americans, okay? So the Barack Obama of the world could use my method, like I mentioned in the previous lesson. The Donald Trumps of the world could use my method. The Elon Musk of the world, the Jeff Bezos could, okay? High-income earners, doctors, lawyers, but more importantly, for me, this is very important to me, America. More importantly, the 64% of you guys living paycheck to paycheck, and the 68% of us who cannot come up with a $400 emergency. Because this thing gonna add a lot of tension, a lot of pressure, okay? When you're dealing with, when you're waiting for the next paycheck. With any little emergency, you're struggling already. A lot of tension, a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, okay? So, part of the reason why Ambroise Method 1.0 was born was because of this statistic, okay? All right, America. So now where I'm at. So we already covered the average, okay? So we're done with the average. So again, I'm already ahead of those guys by 10,337 before the fight against debt starts. Okay, I'm already ahead of them. Okay? Now, let's talk about first in line alternative account and next in line alternative account. Because for the transfer, so far we've done two transfers. We've done one here and we repeat the transfer. So far we've done one transfer, just like Velocity Banking did, and we repeat the transfer. Okay? And our cash flow increased by an additional $59. Okay? 119, then 59. Remember these numbers. Okay? So let me give you about 5-10 seconds to take a look at the board, and then we're going to continue the exercise. All right, America. Now, next item we're going to talk about is first in line, next in line alternative account. Okay. In the previous lesson, I briefly covered first in line alternative account, next in line alternative account. This is where we are now. This is our new starting point because we were here, then we were here for a little bit, then now we're here. Okay? So what do we have left? We have the Navy Federal left, Penn Fed, and Regions, because USAA got taken out. Capital One got taken out completely, at least on paper. Okay? Our first in line alternative account. Let me rewrite some stuff so I could have some room to write. Our first in line alternative account, America, is the account that offers the greater results in terms of reducing interest costs. So we know from previous lesson, when you're comparing two accounts, a credit card versus an HELOC, if the credit card has a higher APR, that should be the account that becomes our first in line alternative account because he has the higher APR. Because remember, what do? The paycheck comes in, you send the paycheck to the alternative account. Well, which account should you send the paycheck to? When you're making payment, you always want to pay the higher APR. Okay? So that's one reason. Okay? So our first in line first in line account will be the Navy Federal. So Navy Federal equals first in line. So first in line alternative account. Okay? And if Navy Federal is first in line alternative account, why? Because Navy Federal offers us greater liquidity. Okay, so we have 15 left on the board, we have 825, we have 813. And again, guys, it's not the HELOC. Stay away from the HELOC when you have a credit card on the board who has a higher APR. Okay, so run your alternative account in the case of, well, let's not even talk about the other guys. Let's concentrate on our method for now. So we'll run all our numbers to the Navy Federal first. Well, to the extent that we can, because remember now, Navy Federal is a credit card. So not all bills can be paid with a credit card. The bills that could be paid with the credit card was only $14.67. So out of the $46.80, well, it's less than $46.80 now because our cash flow increased, which means the expenses decrease. Okay? So all the debt, the bills that can be paid with a credit card is $14.67. Okay? So we will at least have the $14.67 that goes to that first in line alternative account. Because remember now, a credit card is limited. Can I pay all bills with credit card instantly? And in this example, only $14.67 can be paid with a credit card. So at least we have that. So what else do we have? Okay. And by the way, so we're done with transfer. Okay. Transfer was above the line. Now we're doing the A, which is the alternative account. Alternative account was below the line. Okay. On our steps with Ambroise Method 1.0. And the steps is we start asking the question, can we use extra payment or can we use only cash flow? Well, we did not receive any bonus checks. We did not receive any income tax refund. We did not receive any other kind of money, extra money that comes in. So the answer will be cash flow. So which account can we use? Is it going to be cash flow? Is it going to be large payment? Remember the steps that I covered earlier. So you'll be cash flow. And then we start asking the what. Okay? Which account to use? That's the W. How much of a payment? That's the H. And then to pay off which debt? That's the T. Okay? So remember, now we're below the line now. Which account to use? Okay? In this example, we're doing Ambroise Method 1.0 for an advanced user. So an advanced user is going to use an alternative account. So which alternative account to use? So we know we're going to use the Navy Federal as a first in line. But the Navy Federal cannot cover all our expenses because only 1467 could go to the Navy Federal. So now we're going to need another account because we have more than one on the board. We got 3 of them. We have 3 of them left. Okay? So now we're going to try to determine which one's going to become our next in line alternative account. Okay? So that'll be the account that will take care of everything that the Navy Federal cannot take care of. Okay? So when we look at the list, we see we have PenFed. These accounts, the next in line, offers greater liquidity, because remember the first in line offer greater results. Okay? So the next in line will offer greater liquidity, because like I mentioned earlier, not every bill can be paid with a credit card. So now we're looking for liquidity. One of them is the PenFed 825%. The other one is Region HELOC 813%. You see that? So now we have 2 accounts to choose from. Well, James, which one should I choose? And again, we're going to go with the higher APR one. So in this case, it will be PenFed. Because PenFed 825, Region is 813. Okay? Which one is highest? 825 is the highest APR. Okay? So the next in line will be PenFed. And this one will receive, like I aforementioned, any bills that cannot go on the credit card, Navy Federal. So PenFed, excuse me, gonna be next in line alternative account. Okay? First in line alternative account was the Navy Federal credit card. The next in line alternative account is the PenFed one because he has a higher APR. And again, when you're making a payment, you want your payment to go to the highest APR. That's why we did not choose Region HELOC. Okay? And remember, in the prior lesson, when we were comparing credit card versus HELOC, we go with the higher APR. This time it's not credit card versus HELOC, it's HELOC versus HELOC. Same thing, we'll still go with the higher APR to receive income. So the movement of income and expenses will happen inside the higher APR. Okay? Don't do what my competitor is doing, picking the account that they were able to chunk out of. In this case, that was the regions. Remember, you have to treat these things as separate jobs. The T for transfer is a separate job. The A for alternative account is a separate job. And the C is another job. So 3 separate jobs. You will pick, America, the account that is best suited for the job. Okay? In this case, Region is not best suited for the job because he had a lower APR. PenFed is. Okay? So again, the account that is best suited for the job. That's the account you should pick. Okay? In order to achieve the greater results in reducing interest costs. Okay? The higher APR. So it'll be PenFed. Will be next in line. Okay? So now, the account, so PenFed, the minimum payment for PenFed is $497. Okay? We know that on the Navy Federal cannot pay everything, but they can only pay the $1467. So Navy Federal will also receive its own minimum payment, which is the $385. So your Navy Federal will receive all bills that could go on a credit card, which is $1467. Navy Federal will also receive its own minimum payment, that is $385. And Navy Federal, because between these two accounts, Navy Federal has the highest APR, 15%. Penn Fed only 825. So for that reason, Navy Federal will also receive the cash flow. And we've determined that the cash flow is 378. Okay. For a grand total of 1467 plus 385 plus 378 for a grand total of 22. $22.30. Okay? That's the Navy Federal. And again, all bills that could go on a credit card, you'll get all that. Plus, it's on minimum payment, $385, plus the cash flow, $378. Okay? Penn Fed is next in line. Penn Federal receives its own minimum payment, $497, plus whatever amount that cannot go on the credit card. So remember, income is $4880 minus $22.30 minus $487. So the Penn Fed will receive an additional $21.53. So a grand total for Penn Fed is the $21.53 plus its own minimum payment. Remember, $21.53 are some of those other debt that cannot go on the credit card. So we are $26.50. Told you guys, this alternative account, unless you understand what you do in America, that is a very dangerous account if you don't know what you're doing. Okay? Now remember, for income we have $4880, so this should be the total income, the $4880. Okay? Because when we do $22.30 plus $26.50, we should arrive at the $48.80 in income. Okay? Which is kind of like a zero-based type deal. Okay? All income comes in, you have to kind of zero it out by sending them to the proper account. Okay? So as you could see, and again, the Navy Federal will accept, the credit card will accept every bill that could go on a credit card, which is $1467. The credit card would accept its own minimum payment, which is $385, and the credit card will accept the cash flow, because remember, we want cash flow to go to the account that's going to give us the greatest result. So over here, the cash flow is better served over here than it is over there. So cash flow is better served in the Navy Federal than it is in the Penn Fed. Okay? So when we add them up, $22.30. So Penn Fed, which is next in line, because this one offers greater liquidity, will receive its own minimum payment, $497, and it will receive whatever that the cannot go on the credit card, which is $21.53. So in total, $26.50. Okay? All right, America, I'll give you about 5-10 seconds to take a look at what's on the board, and then we're going to continue the exercise. Alright, so, and again, earlier we did transfer. Those are the steps: segregate, compare, transfer, repeat. that was above the line, and then we'll go below the line to answer the question, which account to use. In this case, we use two alternative accounts simultaneously. The Navy Federal as first in line, and the Penn Fed as next in line. So we use two alternative accounts simultaneously, so we use those two at the same time, okay? And the next question, to pay down which debt? So the Navy will receive its own minimum payment, plus bills that could go on a credit card, plus cash flow, okay? So these are these three, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And the Penn Fed, which is the next in line, will receive its own minimum payment, okay? Plus amount that cannot go on a credit card, okay? Now, what is the workflow, James? How does that work? Okay, so we're gonna kind of cover that. Okay. Because remember, we don't get all our income all at once. Okay, so this time we're gonna cover somebody who's on a bi-weekly pay period. You get your paycheck every, let's assume you have 2 paychecks per month, whether you're bi-weekly or semi-monthly on this one. Okay. So, because I want to show you guys the workflow. Because remember, we're using 2 separate alternative accounts. Okay. I apologize, guys. My board is too small. And that is why I always give you guys 5-10 seconds to take a look at the board. So let's assume that the income obviously is $48.80, and we receive that income in 2 separate paychecks. So one paycheck would be, let's see, $48.80 divided by 2. Let's say they are equal. Okay. So $24.40. The first paycheck will have $24.40, and the next paycheck $24.40. So $24.40, $24.40. That's how we arrive at that $48.80 on the paycheck. Okay. All right. So these are take-home pay. First paycheck $24.40, next paycheck $24.40. That's how we arrive at the $48.80, like I mentioned earlier. Now, the workflow. We know that normally the money comes in and get deposited into the checking account. Or if they give you a check, you go cash the check and put it in your checking account. So you'll go the deposit to checking account, or you cash it to the checking account. As soon as the money touches down your checking account, what do you do to it? Okay. Remember, we're assuming that all our bills was due on the 28th because we already changed the due date. So all our bills are due on the 28th, at least most of them. Okay? So paycheck comes in, we send the paycheck to the, let's put the auto pay so I don't forget. We send the paycheck to the first in line alternative account. Okay? Remember, if we have a choice to send it to the first in line or next in line, we'll send it to the first in line to the extent that you can. Those will be for bills that could be paid on a credit card. But since all bills are due on the 28th, there shouldn't be any issue. That's why some of the prep work is to change the due date. So you go from the check, the first $24.40, will go from the checking account to the credit card. Now here's where you have to know your numbers. Remember, the credit card she only received $22.30. But the paycheck is $24.40. Okay? So $22.30 will be sent to the Navy Federal. That's the workflow, guys. Very important. And again, America, if you do not understand this alternative account, how it works, stay away from it. Be an Ambroise Method 1.0 normal user. Remember, you're still going to do better than these guys. Okay? Be a normal user. Don't be an advanced user yet, because this account is a very dangerous account. Okay? So the checking account, $22.30, will go to the Navy Federal. Okay? Because remember, as soon as the income touches down the account, move it over to the alternative account because you decide to use alternative account, so you have to do it properly. So 2230 will move to the Navy, but James, my paycheck is 2440. So if 2230 go to the Navy, well, the remainder will go to the Penn Fed. Okay? So 2440 minus 2230. So 210 will go to Penn Fed. Okay? So that's how you get your 2440 from the first paycheck. You send part of it to 22. Why Navy Federals? Because you've already run your numbers, you know your numbers, so you know how much income should go to the Navy Federal. Okay? Don't be doing things blindly. You got to run your numbers. You got to answer the what, which account, how much, to pay which debt, okay, before you proceed, okay? So 2230 to Navy Federal, Penn Fed receives 210. That's on the first paycheck. On the next paycheck, which is 2440, and again, that paycheck touched down your checking account. And where does it go? Remember, this one's already complete now. You already sent the entire 2230 to Navy Federal, so Navy Federal is not going to receive anything. Okay, so now the Penn Fed will receive the entire next paycheck, 2440. Okay. So in total, we got one paycheck, the first 2440, you're gonna split them, the next 2440. Since Navy already got everything, if Navy did not get everything, so you keep dumping into Navy per paycheck. If this one was insufficient to cover everything, okay? And again, we're assuming that all the bills are due on the 28th of the month, or towards the end of the month, okay? Now, if bills are due in the middle, like the 5th, the 12th, the 19th, okay? Well, I'm gonna do a separate lesson on changing due date because some companies, you cannot change the due date to the 28th. I run into that issue with Capital One where they have like 4 dates that they wanna give me. One is like the 4th, I don't remember exactly, but you know, that one is the 4th, one is the 8th, one is the 13th, one is the 19th. So the lowest date that I would get was the 19th. I believe it was Capital One of the credit card. I'm not sure, but I believe it was Capital One, to where I could not change my due date towards the end of the month. So in situation like this, when I'm doing the lesson on changing due date, I'll cover that aspects of it when we're doing changing due date, okay? Because it's not as simple as you guys think. Oh, you just call them up and change the due date, okay? There are some roadblocks that you guys, you know, might have to deal with, okay? So we're here now. First paycheck, Navy Fed will get this. Penn Fed get that. Next paycheck, since you're done with Navy Federal, they get nothing. So the next paycheck gonna move. As soon as you touch down the paycheck, you send it directly to the Penn Fed. You transfer it to the Penn Fed. Okay? All right, America, let me give you 5-10 seconds to take a look at the board, and then we're gonna continue the exercise. Okay. All right, America. Now, as far as how to pay, remember a lot of times you cannot have an auto pay on the Penn Fed. So the first auto pay gonna be, if you were doing auto payment, okay, the first auto payment will be on the Navy Federal, and we want the auto payment to be on the highest APR. Okay, remember the highest APR was that we have left is Navy Federal. So the auto pay, we have auto pay on Navy, and the next thing would be to have the auto pay on Penn Fed, the next in line, but Penn Fed you cannot have auto pay on a regular traditional PenFed, okay? And if one exists, you cannot have auto pay on a PenFed, because remember, it's not a first and HELOC with a sweep account feature. Those guys, they're doing different things on the other side. So since you cannot have it on auto pay, on the next in line, because Navy Federal already received its own auto pay, and this one's gonna take care of all the bills that can be paid on a credit card, okay? And PenFed cannot have auto pay on PenFed, so in this case, you're gonna have your auto pay on the checking account itself. So auto pay, checking. So the next auto pay gonna be, the next set of auto pay, if you're gonna do auto pay, gonna be on the checking account. And the way it works, remember, first you send them from checking to the Navy Federal, okay? That takes care of all its own auto pay. Then you have another auto pay. This time will be for the bills that cannot go on the checking account. On the credit card. So you'll be from checking to the PenFed, but you have the auto pay on the checking. So remember now the checking is zero balance. So before the due date, you have to remember the workflow now, from checking to the PenFed. But before the due date of the bills that cannot go on a credit card, you have to move the money from PenFed back to the checking account. Okay? First from checking to PenFed, and then now the checking account is zero now. PenFed has the remainder money, which is $24.40 plus the additional $210. Now from PenFed, okay, back to the checking account, okay? All right? Because now the other auto pay is on the checking account. Cannot be on the PenFed, on the checking account. Now, James, why didn't we leave the money inside the checking account? Why do we send it to the PenFed and then at some point to move it back to the checking account? Well, America, you want movement of income and movement of expenses in the next in line account, because it's gonna reduce the overall interest cost that you are being charged on that account. Remember when we employed, which lesson was that? On our past lesson, when we employed Ambroise's wash technique, yeah, that was lesson 3. Ambroise's wash technique. Even though the same amount of income comes into the account, the same amount of expense comes into that account, the overall interest rate got reduced. Okay? So that is why you still do movement from checking to the PenFed, and at a later time you could go from PenFed back to the checking account, because you want that movement. Income first and then expenses second. So you could reduce the high rate. So in this case, it's 825, because you want to reduce that to something lower. Okay? Movement gonna allow you to reduce the 825% into something lower than 825. In essence, you're saving for just having movement of income and expenses, even if it's a wash scenario, even if it's Ambroise wash technique. Okay? We didn't run the numbers, so I don't know what it looks like. But even if it's an Ambroise wash technique, which means same amount of income comes in this case it'll be the 210 plus 2440, and same amount of expenses will go up. The overall interest rate will still get reduced. Okay? And then that was lesson 3, guys. Okay, I cannot recover everything in one lesson. Please go ahead and watch the previous lessons. Okay? All right? So movement on the Navy Federal will reduce the 15% to something smaller as a first in line alternative account, and then movement of income and expenses into the PenFed will also reduce this PenFed account from 825 to something smaller. Okay, so that's how we remember the workflow. From checking to the credit card, that one stays, okay? And the credit card, auto payment from the credit card to pay bills that can be paid with a credit card, okay? The next paycheck from checking to the next in line, which is the PenFed in our example. And then at some point before the bills are due, we move it from PenFed back to the checking account, okay? Because in essence, we want, remember how these things are being computed. Most of these accounts, they are average daily. Average daily. I don't have one. Average daily. Okay? So your goal is to try to keep the average low. That's why you want to all your balance to remain in that account. What that does, it reduces the average, so you keep the average low. So which means the interest that's being charged on the account gonna be a lower interest charge because you keep the balance low. So if you keep the balance high, your interest charge is gonna be high. You keep the balance low, your interest is gonna be low. So that is why you're sending money into these accounts to keep the balance low. In essence, you ended up saving an interest cost on those accounts, okay? And doing it that way, you're gonna use two alternative accounts properly. So in our case, we're using two. The first one is the Navy Federal because that one's gonna give us greater results in reducing interest costs. And the next one will be the PenFed. Okay? And for cash flow, the Navy Federal will keep the cash flow. Because remember, Navy Federal in this particular example will give us greater results. So we'll send them, we want greater results in reducing interest costs, we'll send them cash flow to Navy Federal instead of PenFed. Because PenFed offers greater liquidity, not greatest results. Okay? So know where cash flow goes, okay? Know your numbers, know how to do this thing. If you have to use the cheat sheet, go and use the cheat sheet, whatever you have to do in order to properly run alternative account. And again, America, this is a very dangerous account if you don't know what you're doing, okay? Because you might go backwards instead of saving money. You're hurting yourself. And the thing with this account, you won't even know when you're hurting yourself because remember, you're doing good one place and you're doing bad somewhere else. You think you're doing good when you're actually doing bad overall, okay? Very dangerous account, America, okay? Be an Ambroise Method 1.0 normal user if you do not understand how this thing works, okay? All right. I'll give you guys 5-10 seconds to take a look at the board, and then I'm gonna start erasing stuff from the board. All right, America. All right. So far, let me erase this. So far, I've introduced to you guys numerous strategies and techniques. One of them is Ambroise's partitioning of balance. The other one is Ambroise's charge pay technique. Let's do Ambroise's wash first. So I could put some kind of order. Then we have Ambroise's charge pay. Charge pay technique. And this is normal. Then I also introduced to you guys Ambroise's charge pay technique, inducement, and these are all revolutionary, by the way, but one true revolutionary technique where I use 3 alternative accounts simultaneously. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So in one season, I taught you guys how to Ambroise partition in a balance, which is to divide the balance into, when you compare an account, you don't know which account to pay first. Okay. You want to bring them to an apple-to-apple comparison, and you utilize Ambroise's partition in a balance. Again, Ambroise's partition in a balance is to divide the balance into at least 2 separate parts, where one of the parts will equal the account you're trying to compare it with. Okay? Then I've also introduced to you guys Ambroise's wash technique. That is a technique whereby we covered that in lesson 3, whereby the same amount of income that comes into an alternative account is the same amount of expenses that go out of that alternative account. In other words, if income is $2,500, expenses $2,500. If income is $8,000, expenses is $8,000. Okay. Then we have also introduced to you guys Ambroise's charge pay technique. That is a technique whereby you fire the big bank, the big creditors. You don't need them in order to execute a balance transfer. Okay, you fired them. Big Chase, big Wells Fargo, big Bank of America, you don't need them to do balance transfers. Okay, so that is part of our artificial transfers. Okay, and again, you don't need them to execute a balance transfer to the extent that you can. Okay, this one, by doing this one, you're disrupting a billion-dollar industry. Okay, because now you don't need them to do balance transfer. You're taking away that source of income, that source of revenue from the big bank, the big creditors. Okay, and when you cannot do the normal one, I have another variation, which is Ambroise's charge pay technique inducement. This one's going to cost you something, but you still don't need the big bank, the big creditors to do balance transfer. So we got 2 separate ways whereby I'm teaching you how to fire the big bank, how to fire the big creditors where you don't need them in order to execute a balance transfer. And we know it's important to do balance transfers because that one reduces our sample average on the APR. Okay? Remember earlier, before the fights even start, I was already ahead of those guys by 10, I believe it was 10,000 and some change. Okay? Because I was able to rearrange, okay, reshuffle, reorganize the debt. Okay? I don't like to see debt at higher APR. So to the extent that you can, do your best, America, to rearrange the debt, to reorganize the debt. Because you're saving money right away before you could even do anything with cash flow. You're saving money. Okay? And on our method, cash flow is not even the most important thing. We have cash flow last. Remember, transfer is 1. That's above the line. Then we have alternative account 2. And we have cash flow 3rd position. Okay? This is above the line. This is below the line. These 2, alternative account and cash flow. If you remember from the steps. Okay? So, and again, Ambroise charge pay technique where you fire the banks completely. Okay? But this one's going to cost you some money. This one going to be 0% in balance transfer fees. Okay? And these 2 techniques, all the techniques are in the book, but these 2 techniques are in the book for sure. And I don't think I'm going to cover that on YouTube. Okay, and finally, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Finally, I've introduced to you guys, they're all revolutionary, by the way. Okay, now finally I've introduced to you guys a way to use 3 alternative accounts simultaneously. That'll be on Ambroise Method 2.0, okay, our more advanced version, okay. In this example, we were able to use 2 alternative accounts simultaneously. The Navy Federal was 1 and the Penn Fed was 2. But in Ambroise Method 2.0, which is our advanced version, I introduced 3, a way where you could possibly use 3 alternative accounts simultaneously. And you know, for having movements of income and movement of expenses in those accounts, you're going to reduce the overall interest charge on those accounts. So imagine if you're saving already on 1 alternative account, you're saving already in 2 alternative accounts. And now this guy is saying he's going to introduce to you guys a way to save in 3 alternative accounts. Obviously, you could see that the other method will not be able to compete at all. Okay, our method in America is second to none. Okay, there is nothing like our method in America. Okay, so we emphatically beat the competition. It's not even close. Okay, I just run the numbers for you in addition with all those different things that we're doing. Okay, different strategies, different techniques, revolutionary item. We're doing a whole bunch of things. Those guys, they can't even come close. Okay, so real quick on our observation session, you know that Debt Snowball only uses cash flow. Okay, in their case, $200. Look at the cash flow real quick. $200 here, $200 here, 3 nights in here. Look at us, $378. So on the cash flow side, we beat everybody. Why? Because we continue to do transfer. Okay? So we have a bigger cash flow. Just to start, these guys are 200, but it's not even a fair fight with those guys because all they're doing, they're using 1 item, which is cash flow, and we're using 3 items. Of course, it's not a fair fight. They're using cash flow, just the C, and we're using the TAC, the T, the A, the C. So you're using 1, 2, 3 items while they're using 1 item. Okay? So, of course, we're going to surpass them because we're doing more than they are. Okay? Not a fair fight. Same thing, that Avalanche uses cash flow as well. Okay? And again, it's not a fair fight because they're using 1 item, we're using 3 items. We're using the transfer, alternative account, cash flow. So 1 item versus 3 items, again, it is not a fair fight. Okay? Now, velocity banking, and by the way, look at the results of the account. These guys have Navy Federal, these guys have Capital One, these guys got regions. We have Navy Federal, we have Penn Fed, we have Navy Federal. Okay, you see, remember, for each item, it is a different job. So that's how we treat them. Okay, Navy, Penn Fed, Navy here. Okay, anyways, back to velocity banking. You know, those guys, they practice favoritism. These guys wants to use the HELOC for everything. It was the region HELOC for chunk, the region HELOC for debt weapon, the region HELOC to keep the cash flow. And we know it is a mistake, because these are different jobs. You have to use the account that is best suited for the job. You cannot use HELOC for everything. HELOC. That is one of the major mistakes that the folks of our velocity banking is making. Okay? So, and for us, earlier we did the first transfer, and then we continue to repeat the transfer. And we keep repeating to the extent that we can. Okay, so here, the folks of our velocity banking use 1 chunk. And remember, these folks, they would want to wait another 3 months, another 6 months, another 9 months before they execute the next chunk. Look at us. We've done all these transfers within maybe a few minutes apart, maybe a few hours apart. For sure, less than 1 day. For sure, less than 1 day. We did all these transfers in less than 1 day. We don't wait 3 months. We don't wait 6 months. We don't wait 9 months. We don't wait 12 months. Less than 1 day, America, we arrive at these. Okay? So we did 2 here. transfer, and then we repeat in that particular example. For Odawa, they have regions for the debt weapon. We have Navy Federal, and we have Penn Fed. We have regions no longer in our list. There's no regions here at all. These guys have regions. We don't have regions at all. We have Navy Federal as a first in line alternative account because that will give us the greater results in reducing interest cost. And we have PenFed as the next in line because the interest rate on PenFed was higher. Remember, you do your alternative account on the highest APR account. Navy Federal was only 813. If we have 825, while we're sending payment to an 813 account instead of 825, okay? These people, they closely resemble, well, I don't even want to say that. Let me keep. So 813, 825. Your movement, your payment should always go to the higher APR. Okay? So that's why we have PenFed instead of regions. So again, they were wrong on the debt weapon. Okay, they have regions, we have Navy Federal, we use 2, and we have PenFed. We do not have regions on our side for this particular example. And for cash flow, again, Velocity Banking keeps cash flow inside the HELOC. So they're using the HELOC as a holding account, as an escrow account. No. The cash flow needs to go to the Navy Fed because Navy Fed give us the greater results in reducing interest costs. Look at the APR, 15%, 8%, 813. So the highest one left on the board was the 15%. The 26 Capital One was higher at some point, but we already knocked it out. We got rid of this guy because he was the troublemaker. We got rid of the troublemaker in this particular example. We got rid of the enemy. The biggest enemy was Capital One, 2699. We got rid of that enemy a long time ago, okay, during the transfer process, okay? We do not babysit higher interest account. We hate higher interest account on our method because this is where they're killing you. Remember, interest is the cost of borrowing. So you borrow the money, they're charging you interest. So that is your enemy, your biggest enemy. Okay, that is your barometer, why you need to go by, why you need to attack. Okay, so we got rid of these guys a long time ago during the transfer process. Okay, now as you could see, there are some deficiencies and pitfalls associated with the other method. Okay, look at on the cash flow, too small, bigger. Okay, and we know they're only using cash flow, not a fair fight, using cash flow, not a fair fight. These guys, they attempt to do more items, but they're going about it the wrong way, okay? Still not a fair fight, even though they have 3 items like they do. They chunk, we transfer. They use debt weapon, we use an alternative account. They use cash flow, we use cash flow. So they have 3 items just like we do. That is more like a fair fight, but not really. Because what happened? Because Velocity Banking is not doing things the proper way. Sometimes their results is the same as the Debt Snowball. I mean, similar to a Debt Snowball, or worse than a Debt Snowball. Sometimes the result is similar as a Debt Avalanche, or worse than a Debt Avalanche, because they're not doing things the proper way. Okay? They're doing debt weapon on the wrong account. You know, these guys, they have a fixation, some kind of obsession with ELOC, BLOC, PLOC. Nah. The ELOC, the BLOC, the PLOC, all that offer is just greater liquidity, but that may not be the greater results. Okay, so use it for what it's good for. If it's good for liquidity, use it for liquidity. Now, there are some instances now where the same account that offers greater liquidity is the same account that offers greater results. So one account could have both. One single account could have both. Okay. For example, one of the HELOCs could have both greater liquidity and greater results. But not in this example. In this example, they have greater liquidity, but not the greater results. Because Navy Federal in this example was 15%. So that'll give you the greater results because that interest rate is considerably higher than the interest rate on the other credit card, than the other account, which is the PenFed and the region. Okay? All right. So now you know that these guys, if America, you've been paying off debt using Debt Snowball. If you've been paying off debt using Debt Avalanche. If you've been paying off debt using Velocity Banking, America, you have been paying off debt incorrectly. You have been paying off debt the wrong way. Okay? Now that you know better now, okay, move over to Ambroise Method 1.0. Okay? Now, for some of the financial coaches that are out there, I'm not doing any consultation as of yet because you guys could reach the population more quicker than I can because I'm only one person. So at some point down the road, I want to establish something whereby I have more financial coach comes in so I could teach them how to properly do these things. Because if the reach is to reduce this statistic that was conducted by the Federal Reserve in 2021, where they found out that 64% of Americans paycheck to paycheck, 68% cannot come up with a $400 emergency. If one of my goals is to reduce that statistic, and it's going to be a little harder for me to do it by myself. So at some point, I may have to, do some kind of non-exclusive. Anyways, when the time comes, I'll talk more about it because the more financial coach that I could teach, how to pay off debt properly, okay, we'll be able to reach more people as opposed to just me, one person, okay, trying to do different consultation here. I'm already too busy with what I'm doing. So at some point, financial coach, okay, we're going to work that out down the road, okay? All right, America. Again, my name is James Ambroise. I am the author, creator of Ambroise Method 1.0, our basic version. Ambroise Method 1.0 is a revolutionary debt repayment method that offers greater results in terms of reducing interest costs compared to Debt Snowball, Debt Avalanche, Velocity Banking. Okay. Thank you, Jesus. Until next time, America. Good morning.